Hey there friends, Cynthia here and welcome to my quilt lab. I am back working on Symphony, a Banyan Batiks by Northcott block of the month. It is month 6, block 6. Let's dig in and see what this month has in store for us. Alright, I'm so excited because this month, block number 6, is my favorite. This is the flying geese, the paired flying geese block. I love this block. It is so much fun. And I'm even more excited because not only is it a block inside the center of the quilt, but you can also see along that final border, it appears there as well. So we're going to do a bunch of flying geese today. And if you are not comfortable with it, man, by the end of this month, you will be. You're going to be a flying geese aficionado. All right, so let's talk about some details in this before I get going. Please note that in your tips page on page 6, there is a little talking about what we're going to be doing today, the flying geese instructions. You also want to make sure you're paying really close attention to the diagram that comes with each, because you're going to be making several varieties of colorways of each of these blocks, both in the border and inside the block. So please pay attention to your cutting instructions and your diagrams and make sure you got everything labeled and ready to go, because there's a lot of pieces involved and I don't want you to, make too many of one and not enough of other. All right, let's also dig in and get this party started. Let's go. All right, so I'm going to be working on block 6B on camera today. You're going to be making 2 of these. You'll see in the notes that it's fabric 10 and 11. I do want to mention, though, that block 6A, if you're doing the colorful version, I'm doing the neutral version, of course, but if you're doing that colorful version, that fabric number 9 is lightly striped. I think they call it a loose stripe. So that's a directional fabric. Please take a look at the secondary little box, little diagram, because you want to make sure your stripes are going to end up going in the same direction on each flying geese. So, side note for my colorful way people. All right. So every flying geese will have 1 rectangle and 2 squares, and you see each block has 2 flying geese. So just as the instructions show you on page 6, the tips instructions, you're going to be doing one side at a time. Now I recommend grabbing these 2 squares and doing a line down that center. That's where you're going to be stitching. So let me do that real quick. And I'm just lining my ruler up from corner to corner. And hopefully you can see my pink line. All right, there we go. So what you want to do is you'll want to take this square, and I always do the left side first, it's just me, but you'll want to do each side one at a time. So you're going to put the square, butt it right up against that left edge. If you want to give it a pin, you can. And you're going to be stitching right on top of that center line. After you're finished stitching, you're going to cut away this extra half up here, and you're going to press it open so it retains that rectangle that we originally have. All right, so let me go to the machine. I'll take a couple pictures and I'll see you in just a second. All right, so there's the 1/2, and you want to do that 1/2 entirely before you move on to the second half, because if you do it this way and you don't press until the very end, you won't be able to press this guy open. So one side completely, sew, cut, press, and then the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to go do this side real quick, and I'll be back in just a moment. All right, so there's our finished 1 flying geese. It is the exact same size as that original rectangle that we had, plus our little extra fabrics. If anybody has a good idea of what to do with these extra triangles, let me know. A side note, there is another way to do flying geese, a no waste method, but because there's a limited variety of how many times you're doing each block, they're having you do it the most simplest way, which is the two squares, the two small squares and the rectangle. So, side note. Okay, you're going to be making these many, many, many times so that you can put your squares together. Lots of different varieties. You're making 2 of these on block 6A, you're making 3 of them, and then of course there's a ton for the outside border as well. But before I move on, because I am such a flying geese fan, and if you've watched any of my other videos, you'll also know that I'm also a fan of AccuQuilt. And the fun thing about this pattern is AccuQuilt has a die that's the exact same size that we need for this pattern. So for those of you who have AccuQuilt, it's worth the purchase of going out and getting the flying geese. That's the finished 3x6. And I'll also mention that I saved fabric when I went out to cut these. So you'll see the die. There's the rectangle, the big triangle, and there's the 2 square pieces, which become, of course, 2 half square triangles. The fun thing about AccuQuilt, and no, I'm not getting paid to say this, I just love the product, is that they are cut perfectly, assuming you've pressed and put the mat on nice and flat when you go to send it through the machine. They also have the dog ears already cut off, so you'll see there's the notches both here in the corners and here in the corners, and that's because they will match up perfectly when you go to place them together and then go to stitch. See how perfect that is? Isn't that pretty? So pretty. And then all you have to do is stitch from corner to corner and you get a perfect flying geese. So there's my little AccuQuilt talk if you have AccuQuilt. If not, hey, very simple, easy to do. I'm going to go put this one together and then we're going to talk about putting them in to the blocks because I have a little tip for you to get a pretty little point there where they meet. And I'll see you in just a second. Alrighty, so I got my rectangles all turned into flying geese. We now need to pair them to turn them into a block. And then of course you'll be doing this similarly with the border section too, which I'll talk about in a little bit in just a second. So let's talk about how to put these two together because we want to get those nice pretty points, right? So this is what I do. When I pin them together, keep the point that I want to see, that I want to aim for on top. So let me just throw a little pin in to hold it all together and I can talk about it. All right, and I'll flip this over so you can see. So this side is what's going to be up when I take it to machine, and that's because when I put the needle down right here and I take it all the way across, I can make sure that I hit that point right there. That way, if my rectangle is off just a smidgen, I can still make sure that I get a nice sharp point. That way when I press it open, you can see I pressed going towards that flying geese. And you can see how pretty that little point is. Isn't that nice? That's what I do with all of my flying geese. So that's my little recommendation. And go and start piecing them together. And I'm going to grab my border blocks because we're going to move on to the border instructions next too. So finish your block blocks and then let's move on to the border blocks instructions, putting them together. Let's go. All right, so let's talk about those border blocks. On pages 20 and 21, that's putting the blocks together and how you see them right now in the pairs, just like we did with the regular blocks that are inside the center of the quilt. You'll see that they're all lettered differently, A, B, C, D, E, and you'll be making 2 of these for the first border, and then F, G, H, I, J will be for the second 2. So there's 2 colorways within the border. On the next couple of pages, 22 and 23, or I should say on 23, that's putting these together in one long strip that we're going to save for the very end when we put everything together. So you'll see that that first block, A and E, will have just one flying geese and then just a plain rectangle. And on the other version, F and J will also look similarly. It'll have one flying geese and one plain block. Same thing goes for putting them together in a row as you do as putting them together in a block. I like to put that point up on top because that's what I want to aim for. And this is a good example. You see how it's not quite straight right there? That's fine, because when I go to piece this together at the machine, I'm going to still watch my 1/4 of an inch and still make sure that I hit that point right there. So I'm going to piece all of these together. I'm going to do them in pairs first and then attach that lonesome guy at the end, and you'll have 2 long strips of A through E and then 2 long strips of F through J. So let me go do that real quick. I'll be back in just a minute with a finished border. To the machine! All right, there's my finished pair. I'm going to put it with the other one and make sure I put my little label on it so that I remember, because that's going to become important at the end. And of course, there is one of the borders. This is the border that was at A right there. And I'm going to attach a little pin to it as well, so to know that this is the A through E. Look at how pretty it is. Oh, I'm so excited. I love flying geese. This is one of my favorite things about this pattern, is that flying geese in the borders. So pretty. All right, so you're making 2 of these borders, 2 of the A through E's and 2 of the F through J's. Set all this fun guys aside, because we still have 6 more blocks ahead of us, plus putting the quilt together. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, give me a thumbs up. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments below, and I will see you next time in my quilt lab. This is Cynthia saying, keep quilting. Bye-bye.